Be me, 24, a few years ago. Living a pretty standard life. Had a decent job as a sysadmin for a mid-sized marketing firm, not making six figures, but paid the bills, had savings, and could afford my hobbies. Lived in a simple one-bedroom apartment, clean, functional, nothing fancy. My free time was spent on two things mostly, hiking and video games. Had a small, tight-knit group of friends I'd known since high school. We'd either go camping on weekends or just chill online, playing whatever was new. Life was stable. I was content. I wasn't aiming to be a CEO or a rock star. I just wanted a peaceful existence. Wasn't a recluse or anything, went out to bars occasionally, went on a few dates here and there from apps. Nothing ever stuck, usually fizzled out after a couple of weeks. I wasn't bitter about it, just figured I hadn't met the right person. Then I met Sally. It was at a mutual friend's birthday party, one of those backyard barbecue things in late summer. I was just hanging by the grill, talking about nonsense with a buddy when she walked over. She was with the birthday girl. They introduced us. I remember being immediately struck by her. She had this bright smile and laughed easily. We started talking, and it was effortless. Not the usual awkward small talk you have with strangers. We talked for what felt like hours, about movies, travel, dumb stuff we did in college. She seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. Even when I mentioned my nerdy hobbies, she didn't get that glazed-over look. She asked questions, she engaged. At the end of the night, I walked her to her car and asked for her number. I was half expecting a polite rejection, but she smiled that bright smile again and gave it to me. Felt like I was floating all the way home. The first month was what you'd call a honeymoon phase. It was perfect. Our first date was just a simple dinner at a local Italian place, but we closed the place down. The conversation never stopped. We had so much in common in terms of values, or so I thought. Family was important to both of us. We both wanted to travel someday, see the world. She was smart, witty, and seemed to have a good head on her shoulders. She told me she was tired of guys who played games, guys who weren't serious. She said she was looking for a good, reliable man. My brain just went, bingo, that's me. I was all in. We spent almost every weekend together. Sometimes we'd go out, try new restaurants, see a movie. Other times we'd just stay in, cook dinner together, and watch something on Netflix. She seemed to love the simple things. She'd praise my cooking, even though it was just basic stuff like pasta or steak. She'd lay her head on my chest while we watched a show, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. I introduced her to my friends. They all liked her. They said she was cool, down to earth. For the first time in a long time, I felt genuinely happy and optimistic about the future. It felt like I had finally found my partner. The search was over. The first crack appeared about 3 months in. It was so small I almost didn't notice it. We were sitting on my couch, just relaxing after a long week. I was telling her about a challenging server migration I'd handled at work. I was proud of it. It was a complex problem, and I solved it. She was scrolling on her phone while I talked. I figured she was just half listening, which was fine. Then she sighed, a deep melancholic sigh. I stopped talking and asked if everything was okay. She turned her phone screen to me. It was a social media profile of some guy. Let's call him Damien. This Damien guy was the definition of an influencer. Perfectly chiseled jaw, flawless tan, designer clothes. One picture showed him on a yacht in the Mediterranean. Another showed him driving a supercar through a mountain pass. Another was him at some exclusive rooftop party in a big city. His whole life looked like a commercial for cologne. Sally said something like, "Can you imagine living like that? Just effortlessly successful." I chuckled and said, "Yeah, must be nice to have a trust fund." She didn't find it funny. She looked at me a little too seriously and said, "He's self-made. He's an entrepreneur. It's not about money, Adam. It's about mindset." The word mindset hung in the air. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. She went back to scrolling through his pictures, and the comfortable silence we used to have was suddenly replaced by an awkward one. I felt a strange, cold feeling in my stomach. It was the first time I felt like I was being compared, and I knew I didn't measure up. After that night, Damien became a ghost in our relationship. He was the invisible third person on every date, in every conversation. It started with my clothes. I've always been a simple dresser. Jeans, t-shirts with band logos, or from hiking trails, comfortable hoodies. Functional, that's what I cared about. One day Sally was looking through my closet. She had this thoughtful, almost clinical look on her face. She told me it was time for me to invest in myself. She said a man's appearance is a reflection of his ambition. A week later, for no special occasion, she bought me a shirt. It was a designer polo shirt, the kind with a little logo on the chest. I looked up the price online later. It cost more than my monthly internet bill. I thanked her, of course, but it felt weird. I wore it on our next date to make her happy. She beamed. "See, you look so much more put together, so much more high value." Mars high value. Another one of those words. The shirt was tight and uncomfortable. I felt like I was wearing a costume. But she was happy, so I pushed the feeling down. This opened the floodgates. My entire wardrobe was now under scrutiny. My favorite comfy hoodie was sloppy. My graphic tees were childish. She would send me links to online stores. Everything was sleek, minimalist, and expensive. I ended up spending a few $100s on new clothes just to keep the peace. A couple pairs of slim-fit chinos, some button-down shirts, a pair of leather shoes I could barely walk in. My friends noticed. One of them jokingly asked if I was going to a job interview. I just laughed it off, but it stung. I felt like I was losing pieces of myself, one t-shirt at a time. Once my appearance was upgraded, she moved on to my lifestyle. My hobbies, which she once found charming, were now problems to be solved. I remember one Friday night, I was planning to log on with my friends to play a new game release. It was a tradition for us. We'd all been looking forward to it. I told Sally about it, and she got this disappointed look on her face. She asked if playing video games was really how I wanted to spend my prime years. She showed me her phone again. There was a post from Damien. He was at a networking event for young entrepreneurs. He was holding a glass of champagne and smiling, surrounded by other people in expensive suits. Sally said, "Successful men don't waste their time. They build connections, they create opportunities." I tried to explain that it was just my way of unwinding, of staying connected with my friends. She framed it as a lack of drive. She told me she was worried about me, that she saw so much potential in me, and it was being wasted. It was a clever tactic. It wasn't an attack, it was concern. It made me feel guilty. I ended up canceling on my friends. I told them I wasn't feeling well. I spent the evening on the couch, watching a business documentary with Sally that she insisted would expand my mindset. I felt miserable. I felt like I had betrayed my friends and myself. This became a pattern. My hiking trips were next. I was planning a weekend camping trip to a national park I loved. When I told her, she suggested a better use of the weekend. A weekend seminar on personal branding and social media marketing. She showed me a post of Damien giving a talk at a similar event. She said, "This is an investment in your future. Hiking is just walking in the dirt." I put my foot down on that one. I loved hiking. It was my sanctuary. We had our first real fight about it. She didn't yell. She was calm, which was almost worse. She accused me of having a fixed mindset, of being afraid of success. She said my contentment with my simple life was actually a form of self-sabotage. I still went on my hiking trip, but the joy was gone. Her words echoed in my head with every step. I felt like I was doing something wrong just by enjoying myself. Her focus then shifted to my career. My stable, reliable job as a sysadmin was no longer good enough. It wasn't ambitious. It wasn't prestigious. She started asking me why I wasn't trying to climb the corporate ladder faster. Why wasn't I in management? Why wasn't I starting my own business? I tried to explain that I liked my job. I was good at it. It was low stress, and it provided a good work-life balance. To her, that was a loser's mentality. She was always talking about passive income, side hustles, and scaling. Her vocabulary was a collection of buzzwords she picked up from guys like Damien. She would suggest things I could do. "You're good with computers. You should start a consulting business. You should learn to code apps. There's a huge market for that. You should start day trading crypto." I had zero interest in any of those things. Every time I expressed my contentment, she saw it as a personal failing. It felt like being in a relationship with a relentlessly demanding career coach, not a loving girlfriend. I started to feel a constant low-grade anxiety. I felt like I was always being evaluated, always being tested, and always failing. Our intimate life suffered. The easy affection was gone. It felt conditional. She would be warm and loving after I did something that met her approval, like buying a new expensive watch, she pointed out. But if I had a lazy weekend or talked about a game I was excited for, she would become distant and cold. Her affection was a reward, not a given. Sometime in the spring of the next year, I actually got a promotion at work. It wasn't a huge leap. I went from systems administrator to senior systems administrator. It came with a decent pay raise and more responsibilities. I was genuinely proud of myself. I had worked hard for it. I took Sally out to a nice restaurant to celebrate, one she had been wanting to try. It was expensive, but I felt like I had earned it. I told her the news over dinner. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She said, "That's great, sweetie. A good step." A step, not a destination, not an achievement. She then asked what the salary for my next position would be. I hadn't even had 24 hours to enjoy this one, and she was already pushing me towards the next one. The conversation then somehow drifted back to Damien. She mentioned he had just launched a new app that was getting a lot of buzz. She mused about how much money he must be making from it. The joy of my promotion just evaporated. I felt small, insignificant. My real, tangible achievement was nothing compared to the fictional success of a guy on her phone screen. We ate the rest of our meal in relative silence. I paid the bill, which was more than my car payment. Walking out of the restaurant, I didn't feel like a successful man celebrating a promotion. I felt like a kid who brought home a B+ on his report card, only to be asked by his parents why it wasn't an A+. That night, I lay in bed awake for a long time. I started to realize that this wasn't about me improving myself. This was about me being molded into a completely different person, a person I didn't want to be. I was Adam, the sysadmin who liked hiking. She wanted me to be Damien, the crypto bro entrepreneur, and there was no way I could ever be that person, or that I would even want to be. But I still loved her, or at least I loved the version of her I met at that barbecue. I held on to the hope that the old Sally was still in there somewhere, buried under all these layers of ambition and social media poison. I decided I would make one last grand effort, one big gesture to prove my love and my worth, to show her that I could be the man she wanted. Her birthday was coming up in a few months. I started planning, and I started saving. It felt like my last chance to save our relationship. I had no idea it would be the thing that finally destroyed it. Her birthday was in late August, and I started saving in May. I took on some extra weekend projects at work, pulling cables and setting up networks for small businesses. I stopped buying anything for myself. No new games, no new gear. I ate cheap meals. Rice and beans became a staple. Every spare dollar went into a separate account labeled Sally's birthday. I wanted to do something that would finally impress her, something that couldn't be dismissed as a nice step. I wanted to give her an experience she saw on her social media feed. After weeks of research, I booked a weekend trip for us. It was a surprise. I booked a suite at a luxury spa resort a few hours' drive from the city. It had an infinity pool, a gourmet restaurant, a couple's massage package, the works. The pictures on the website looked like something straight out of Damien's profile. The total cost was staggering. It wiped out all my savings and then some. I had to put the last chunk of it on a credit card, but I kept telling myself it would be worth it to see her genuinely happy, to finally get that unconditional approval I was craving. The day of her birthday, I woke her up with breakfast in bed and told her to pack a bag for a surprise weekend. She was excited, genuinely, for the first time in a long time. The whole drive there, she was guessing where we were going. When we pulled up to the resort, her eyes went wide. This was it. I'd done it. She took a million pictures of the lobby, the room, the view from our balcony. She posted them online immediately with captions full of hashtags like "Oh, blessed" and "luxury." For a little while, it felt like the old days. We went to the spa, we had the couple's massage, we lounged by the pool. She was smiling, laughing, holding my hand. She kept telling me how amazing this was. I felt a massive wave of relief. All the stress, all the extra work, it had all paid off. That evening, I took her to the resort's high-end restaurant. We were sitting at a table with a perfect view of the sunset. I had bought a new shirt for the occasion, one of the expensive ones she liked. She looked beautiful. Everything felt perfect. And then it happened. She was on her phone, showing a friend pictures of our room. And she must have opened her feed because her expression changed. That familiar faint look of disappointment returned to her eyes. I asked what was wrong. She hesitated, then turned her phone to me. "I was just looking," she started to say. It was Damien's profile. Of course, he had posted a new story. He had apparently surprised his own girlfriend for her birthday. He had flown her to Dubai, first class. The video showed them in a ridiculous penthouse suite overlooking the city, with rose petals all over the floor and champagne on ice. Sally quickly put her phone away, but the damage was done. The magic of our evening was shattered. She said, "This is amazing, Adam. It really is. I'm so grateful." But her tone was hollow. Her smile was forced. I could see the gears turning in her head. My grand gesture, the most expensive and elaborate thing I had ever done for another person, had just been rendered second-rate by a 30-second video on her phone. She continued, "It's just incredible what's possible, isn't it? The levels of success some people achieve." I finally snapped. I wasn't angry. I was just broken. I told her quietly, "Sally, I am not Damien." I explained how I had saved for months, how much work it took. I told her I couldn't compete with the top 0.1% of men on the planet. I told her that I was just a normal guy who loved her and was trying his absolute best. She got defensive. She told me I was making this all about money, but it wasn't. It was about ambition and drive. She said my reaction was a sign of a scarcity mindset. She claimed she was only trying to inspire me to be my best self. The rest of the dinner was agonizingly silent. The very next day, the illusion of a perfect weekend was gone. The mood was tense. The drive home was quiet. A week later, she ended things. It wasn't a big dramatic fight. It was a calm, calculated execution. She sat me down on my own couch in my own apartment. She had a speech prepared. She told me she loved me, but she had to love herself more. She said she couldn't be in a relationship where she was the only one pushing for growth. She said she needed a partner who was on her level, or on the level she aspired to be. I just sat there and took it. I was too tired to argue. I asked her if anything I ever did was good enough. She thought for a moment and said, "It was good enough for the person you are now, but not for the person I know you could be." It was the most condescending, soul-crushing thing anyone has ever said to me. Then she delivered the final blow, the phrase that I'm sure every guy in my position has heard. She said, with a sigh of martyrdom, "I guess there are just no good men left." She was talking about a world of 4 billion men while sitting in front of a guy who had literally bankrupted himself for her birthday. She got up and left. I didn't try to stop her. I just sat there in the quiet of my apartment for hours. I felt empty. I felt like a failure. For months, I was in a bad place. I felt used, discarded, and completely inadequate. Her voice was in my head, criticizing everything I did. But slowly, very slowly, I started to put myself back together. The first thing I did was purge everything that reminded me of her. The expensive clothes went to a charity donation bin. Putting on my old, comfortable hoodie felt like coming home. I reconnected with my friends. I apologized for being distant. They understood. They had seen it happen. I started going to the gym, not to build a high-value physique, but because hitting a punching bag felt damn good. I threw myself into my work, not for a promotion, but for the satisfaction of solving problems. As it turned out, focusing on the work itself led to another promotion a year later, and a better job at a new company after that. The irony wasn't lost on me. I went hiking every chance I got. Standing on top of a mountain, alone with my thoughts, I started to heal. I realized my worth wasn't tied to my job title, my bank account, or the brand of clothes I wore. I was happy being Adam, the sysadmin who liked hiking. There was nothing wrong with him. The problem wasn't my lack of ambition, it was her lack of appreciation. I didn't date for a couple of years. I just focused on building my own life, on my own terms. I built up my savings again. I got into woodworking. I learned to cook new things just for myself. I found peace in my own company. About 5 or 6 years passed. Life was good. I was in my early 30s. I had a great job, a nice place, a solid group of friends. I was even seeing someone new, a woman who was kind, funny, and who seemed to actually like me for me. One boring evening, out of pure curiosity, I typed Sally's name into a social media search bar. I found her profile. It was public. It was like a car wreck. I couldn't look away. Her feed was a wasteland of passive-aggressive quotes and thinly veiled bitterness. Posts about knowing your worth and never settling. Memes about toxic masculinity and the emotional immaturity of modern men. Photos of her out for brunch with friends, all of them forcing smiles that looked painful. There was a desperate quality to it all. a frantic performance of a happy, empowered single life that rang completely hollow. She was older now, of course. The youthful glow I remembered was gone, replaced by a hard, cynical edge. There was no man in any of her pictures, no hint of a stable relationship. Just a revolving door of expensive cocktails and complaints about the dating pool. The final nail in the coffin came a few months after that. I had reactivated one of my old dating app profiles, mostly out of habit. I was swiping idly while watching TV. And then, her profile appeared on my screen. My heart did a weird little flip. The pictures were a mix of old and new. Some were from when we were together, heavily filtered. The most recent one was a selfie. The forced smile was there, but her eyes looked tired, defeated. But it was her bio that truly told the story. It was a long list of demands. Must be over 6 feet tall, must be financially established, must be ambitious and have a growth mindset, must be emotionally intelligent, no projects, no baggage, no men who need fixing. She wanted a finished product, a perfect man, delivered to her doorstep. She was still searching for Damien. And as I read that list, I had a strange realization. I met most of her criteria now. I was in the best shape of my life. My career was solid. I was financially secure. I had worked on myself and was a more mature person. I was, by her own ridiculous standards, closer to the man she claimed she wanted. But as I looked at her profile, at the bitter demands and the sad eyes, I felt absolutely nothing for her. No anger, no resentment, not even pity, really. Just a profound sense of detachment. She had thrown away a real person who loved her in pursuit of a fantasy. And now, years later, she was still chasing that fantasy while the world had moved on without her. She had become a ghost in her own life, haunted by the impossible standards she had set. I held my thumb over the screen for a moment, then I swiped left, and I never thought about her again.